Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Lightsabers. Chapter 4. The jungle clearing was alive with thousands, no, millions of living creatures and interesting plants, strangely colorful mushrooms and droning insects, all of which offered great distractions to Jason. He had to work very hard to keep his mind from wandering. At the moment, it was far more important to pay attention to Luke Skywalker as he set up his first lightsaber dueling exercise for the young Jedi Knights. During the construction of their weapons, the trainees had sparred with dueling droids and with each other, using sticks the same lengths as a lightsaber blade. After completing their lightsabers, they had spent a week practicing with their real weapons against stationary targets, accustoming themselves to the feel of the energy blades. Now, though, Luke Skywalker had deemed them ready to move on to the next step. The clearing was a burned-out spot where lightning had sparked a brief but intense forest fire. The jungle dampness and lush foliage had quickly smoldered the blaze, but a huge Masashi tree, its trunk charred and weakened by the searing flames, had toppled over, taking with it several smaller trees and bushes. The rest of the clearing was a matted maze of pale green undergrowth, weeds and grasses and flowers attempting to reclaim the burned and crumbly soil. Because today's exercises would be both mental and physical, Uncle Luke wore a comfortable flight suit, as did Jason and Jaina. Tenel Ka's ever-present reptilian armor left her arms and legs bare, leaving her complete freedom of movement. Her long reddish-gold hair had been plaited into intricate braids, with special ornamentation on each one. Lobaka wore no garment other than his belt, woven of strands he harvested from the deadly siren plant in the deep forests on Kashyyyk. Eam-Tidi hung in his accustomed place at the Wookiee's waist. All of the young Jedi Knights carried something new and special this time, though, their own lightsabers, completed after weeks of delicate construction. While Jason stood with his friends, flickering occasional glances in the direction of the rustling leaves that hinted at the presence of strange creatures, Luke Skywalker took a seat on the massive fallen trunk. At last he unslung the mysterious pack he had lugged all the way from the great temple. "What's in there, Uncle Luke?" Luke asked, unable to restrain his curiosity. Since he couldn't investigate the interesting insects and plants, he needed to focus his mind on something else. Luke gave him a secretive smile and withdrew a scarlet sphere the size of a large ball, perfectly smooth except for tiny covered openings that might have been repulsor jets or small targeting lasers. Luke set the ball on the slanted burned trunk. Miraculously, it did not roll down the slope, but remained exactly where he had placed it. He withdrew another of the scarlet spheres and another. "Remotes!" Jaina cried, guessing what they were. "Those aren't remotes, aren't they, Uncle Luke? What are they for?" "Target practice," he said. All four remotes sat balanced on the burned Masashi trunk, refusing to roll, as if they could ignore gravity. Lobaka grunted with surprise, and Tenel Ka straightened. "We're going to shoot at them?" "No," Luke said. "They're going to shoot at you." "And we deflect the shots with our lightsabers?" Jason asked. "Yes," Luke said. "But it's not as easy as you might think." "I never said I thought it'd be easy," Jason muttered. Tenel Ka nodded. "A lesson to sharpen our reflexes and concentration. We must react quickly to intercept each burst from the remotes." "Ah, but it gets harder," Luke said. He reached into the sack again, removed a flexible helmet with a transparent steel visor tinted with a deep red, and handed it to Tenel Ka. "You each wear these." He withdrew another pair of helmets for the twins, but the last one consisted of only a red visor fastened with crude tie straps. "Sorry, Lobaka, I couldn't find a helmet big enough for your head. This'll have to do." Jason slipped the helmet over his perpetually tousled brown hair and suddenly saw the jungle through a scarlet filter. The thick forest held a more primeval quality now, as if it were backlit with smoldering fires. The details were duller, darker, and Jason wondered what the helmet and visor were supposed to do. Protect them against stray shots from the remotes? He looked over at the bright remotes that had nestled on the burned tree trunk, or rather, where they should have been. Jason blinked. "Hey, they're gone!" "Not gone," Luke said, "just invisible." "When you look at the remotes through the red filters, you can't see them anymore." Luke smiled. "That's the point. When Obi-Wan Kenobi taught me, he made me fight using a helmet with a blast shield down. I couldn't see a thing. You'll at least be able to see your surroundings, but not the remotes." Jason wanted to ask how he was supposed to fight what he couldn't see, but he knew what Luke would say. "I don't want you totally blind," Luke continued. Because all four of you will be training here in the clearing with different remotes. This way you'll be able to see each other. I don't want anyone getting too enthusiastic and causing injuries instead of just deflecting laser bolts. This brought a small chuckle from Jason and Jaina, but Master Skywalker looked at all the trainees calmly. I wasn't kidding, he said. A lightsaber can cut through practically any substance known. That includes people. Remember this warning. Lightsabers are not toys. They are dangerous weapons. Treat them with the utmost care and respect. I hope that the time you spent building your lightsaber has taught you more about its power and its tricks. Luke picked up a set of controls. Now let's see how well you work with the Force and your own energy blades. He flipped the switch, and Jason heard a hissing, whirring sound, but he saw nothing until he pushed up the scarlet visor. The four remotes drifted in the air, spinning around and scanning the vicinity. These lasers are low power, Luke said, but don't think they won't sting if you get hit by one. Jason muttered to his sister, at least he's not throwing rocks or knife at us like at the Shadow Academy. Visors down, Luke said. Take your positions. The companions spread out in the clearing, tramping down the weedy underbrush. And ignite your lightsabers, Luke said, then sat back. He seemed to be enjoying himself. As one, the four Jedi trainees held out the handles of their new weapons and depressed the power studs. Brilliant beams sprang out in the red dimness. Bright slashes the length of a sword's blade, burning through the thick crimson in front of Jason's eyes. The tinted mass drained all other colors from their own lightsabers, transforming them into red rods. It reminded Jason of Darth Vader's weapon. The remotes are circling now, Luke said. In the next 30 seconds, they'll begin to fire at random. Reach out with the Force. Feel them. Sense the impending attack. Then use your lightsaber hand blade to deflect it. A lot of your training has been leading up to this. Let's see how well you do. Jason sensed, holding his lightsaber ready. Much as he hated to admit it, he drew on some of his skills Baracus had taught him at the Shadow Academy. He felt the energy blade humming in his hand, pulsing with power. The sharpness of the ozone reached his nostrils. He heard his friends moving about, preparing for an attack that could come from any direction. The buzzing lightsabers muted all other sounds, just as the red filter drowned out all the colors. Suddenly, Jason heard a snapping shot, though he saw nothing. A loud Wookiee yowl proceeded from the vibrating hum of a lightsaber blade, sweeping sideways and hitting nothing. Lowy roared again. Dear me, Master Labaka, that wasn't even close! EMTD exclaimed. I hope you will improve significantly with practice. Lowy snarled, sounding hurt, and EMTD responded with somewhat coward fashion. Well, all right, I understand it's more difficult when you can't see anything. Even so, I should think it's advisable to allow it to strike you again. Jason's interest in the conversation vanished when a sizzling bolt shot out from behind and struck him squarely in the backside. He yelped with pain. The tiny wound burned as badly as a stinger lizard had zapped him. He whirled, slashing the lightsaber, but by then it was too late. From across the clearing, another bolt shot out, followed by the crash of underbreath. Through the visor, he saw Tennel Claw leap to one side. A branch snapped in two as the invisible laser stuck where Tennel Claw had stood only seconds before. The warrior girl crouched, holding her lightsaber up, her head cocked in concentration. Jason reached out with his mind, trying to sense through the Force where the remote would shoot next. He heard two more laser blasts and a spang as Jaina successfully deflected one of the bolts. Jason focused on the pain at the spot where he had been struck by the laser, using it to intensify his determination. He didn't want to be struck again. Another laser beam shot out. He swiped his lightsaber at it, barely missing, though his motion was enough to shift him out of its path so the beam sizzled past. He felt the warmth of its passage, but he could not see it. That was close, he said, then instinctively swung his strike again as the remote fired once more. Jaina parried a flurry of bolts as her remote attacked mercilessly, firing 5 times in rapid succession. One of her bolts ricocheted off the glowing edge of her lightsaber directly toward Jason. He responded without conscious thought, using the Force and flowing with it, somehow knowing what to do as he shifted his own blade sideways, just enough to catch the diverted bolt. Then the deflected blast bounced up into the trees where it fried a fistful of leaves. In a single fall-through motion, Jason spun, reaching up with a lightsaber blade to ward off a second bolt fired from another remote hovering in front of them. Lobako bellowed with triumph as he, too, got the hang of defending himself. Except for her heavy breathing, Tenel Ka was quiet, thoughtful. Through the red filter, Jason watched as she parried one of the lasers and leapt upward with all her might, using her lightsaber like a lever. A shower of sparks interrupted the smoking hole appeared in midair. Jason heard a thunk as pieces of Tenel Ka's remote fell useless to the jungle floor. All right, that's enough for now, Luke Skywalker said. Tenel Ka switched off her weapon and stood with her hands on her hips, her elbows spread. Jason flipped up his red visor to discover his own remote, hovering barely an arm's length in front of his face. He stepped back, startled. Tenel Ka's remote lay on the ground, sliced in two, its circuits flickering and sparkling. Jaina and Loie shut off their weapons, stood panting and grinning. Jason rubbed the burning pain in his backside and grimaced sheepishly, hoping none of the others would notice. Excellent, all of you, except now it looks I'll need a new remote, Luke said, smiling wryly at Tenel Ka. You did very well with the Force. Not only with the Force, she said, thrusting her chin upward and squaring her shoulders. I also used my ears to track the remote. When I concentrate, I could hear it even above the sound of the lightsabers. Luke chuckled. Good. A Jedi should use all available skills and resources. Jaina gripped the lightsaber in both hands and positioned the brilliant electric violet blade in front of her. She looked past the searing line of controlled fire at Lobaka, her opponent, who stood opposite her, a lightsaber in his hairy grasp. He growled in readiness. Jaina looked into the young Wookiee's golden eyes, saw the dark streak of black fur swirling up from the eyebrow and round his head. She swallowed and tensed. Though lanky, Lobaka was much taller than her, and Jaina knew he was about 3 times as strong. But his furry expression, she saw uncertainty, a genuine discomfort that mirrored her own. Do I really have to fight Loie, Master Skywalker? Jaina asked. Luke Skywalker stood. You're not fighting him, Jaina. You're fencing with him. Test your opponent. Gauge each other's skills. Learn to judge reactions. Explore strategies, but be careful. Jaina thought of her training at the Shadow Academy and how she and Jason had dueled with lightsabers, not realizing they had fought each other in a holographic disguise. Remember, Luke cautioned, a Jedi Knight's fight only as a last resort. If you're forced to draw your lightsaber, you have already forfeited much of your advantage. A Jedi trusts to the Force, and at first seeks other ways to resolve problems. Patience, logic, tolerance, attentive listening, negotiation, persuasion, calming techniques. But there are times when a Jedi must fight. Knowing that the Shadow Academy is out there, I fear those times will come all too soon for us. And so you must learn how to wield your lightsabers. He stepped back and motioned to Jason and Tenel Ka, who waited on the edge of the clearing, sitting next to each other on the burned tree trunk. You two will be next, Jaina. Don't worry about Loie being so much bigger and stronger than you are. Dealing with the lightsabers is primarily skill, and I think you're equally matched in that. Your one true disadvantage is his reach is much longer than yours. Unfortunately, Luke said with a sigh. Circumstances don't always pit us against equal opponents. As for you, Loie, be careful not to underestimate Jaina. He dropped back to watch. Now, show me what you can do. Well, Jaina said, stepping forward, keeping her gaze locked with Loie's. What are we waiting for? The Wookiee shifted his lightsaber, bringing its molten bronze blade into position. Jaina moved hers up to meet it, crossing her blade against his. She felt the pressure, the sizzling of sparks and discharge as the powerful beams drove against each other. She saw the muscles bulging as Loie's long arms strained against hers, but Jaina held her own. All right, let's try something else. Jaina withdrew her lightsaber and then swung it at her Wookiee friend slowly, cautiously, and Lobaka met it with another crackle of released energy. Swinging to strike again, she said, "This isn't so bad." Loie defended himself. He seemed reluctant to do battle. Knowing that Loie had endured horrifying struggles at the Shadow Academy, and remembered again that she had been forced to fight her own brother, Jaina realized that Brackus and the violet-eyed Timothy Kai would stop at nothing to bring down the New Republic. She and Loie would both be needed to defend against the Dark Jedi. She decided now that the best way to rid Loie of his reservations was to go on the offensive. And this time she did not feel strangled by darkness. Today, Jaina fought with full willingness, learning to be a defender of the light side, a champion of the Force. Uncle Luke had been correct in his speech in front of the Jedi trainees. She knew in her heart that the Shadow Academy had only begun to cause trouble, and she would have to fight to get her friend Zeke Fred. But first she had to learn how. Lobaka responded with greater strength, a better show of his abilities, as he parried her blows and struck back with his own. She had to move quickly to cross blades with him again. They clashed and struck. Sparks flew. Loey spun and chopped down, but he had met his lightsabers with hers. Smiling, intently focused, she heard Jason cheering from the side. "Excellent, Master Lobaka," EMTD said. "Now do be careful. You wouldn't want a flying spark to damage me." Jaina felt the force flowing through her. Lobaka wore an expression of exhilaration on his furry face. He opened his mouth, showing fangs, and letting out a bellow of challenge. Not mean or angry, simply an outpouring of excitement. Loey grasped the handle of his large lightsaber with both hands and swept sideways, attempting to catch Jaina by surprise. But she turned the tables on him. Summoning a burst of energy, she astonished the Wookiee by leaping high into the air up to the level of Lobaka's head. His lightsaber swept harmlessly beneath her, and she landed lightly on the weed-covered ground behind him, laughing and panting. "Oh my, that was most unexpected," EMTD said. "Splendid work, Mistress Jaina." "Hey, that was great, Jaina," her twin brother called. Loey raised his lightsaber in salute. Jaina grinned, and her eyes gleaming. "Most impressive," Luke said, turning to Jason and Tenel Ka. "Next, let's see how our spectators do."